My name, as I said at the beginning this morning, is Andrea Wilson Woods. I'm the president and founder of Blue Faery. And my talk is Better Off Bald, the transformational power of showing up. Because that is what you guys did today. You showed up. You showed up for yourself. You showed up maybe for a loved one. And that is half the battle, is showing up. And these are all leadership lessons from my book, Better Off Bald, A Life of 147 Days. And if you stick around till the end, one of you is going to win a free copy in our giveaway. And here's an overview of what I'm going to talk about. You're going to meet my amazing sister, Adrienne. That is her. I'm going to talk about the caregiver as a leader. You have a very important role to play and as part of that multidisciplinary team. I'm going to discuss navigating the medical maze because, let's face it, it is a maze and there are a lot of dead ends. How to have grace under fire. I'm going to elaborate on what I call the 147-day mindset and give all of you a call to action. Now, we're going to go back in time to May 16th, 2001, a little over a year after this photo was taken. I walked into my house after work and found my 15-year-old sister, Adrienne, curled up in a fetal position on the floor, crying and saying that she could not breathe. And this was a kid who never cried. I was really shocked. We went to her pediatrician. He didn't like what he saw. He sent us to the only hospital in Burbank, California, and they ordered a CAT scan. And as she was being wheeled in for the CAT scan, Adrienne said, "Hey, sissy." That's what she called me, sissy. She said, "Hey, sissy, watch it be cancer." And I laughed and I said, "Oh, bite your tongue." And she laughed. And we had no idea in that moment how prophetic her joke was. And May 16th, 2001 was day one of her cancer journey. Now we're going to go a little bit further back in time, about 6.5 years, to December of 1994. A then 8-year-old Adrienne came to visit me for what was supposed to be a 2-week holiday visit in Los Angeles with her sissy. Unfortunately, by that point, our mother's life had really unraveled. Our mother was a drug addict, and she lost her nursing job for shooting up morphine at work. And things have really been falling apart. And Adrienne and I have the same mother, but different fathers. Unfortunately, her father died in a car accident before she was born. So here she is for Christmas. And I went all out because I'm thinking, it's Christmas. This is it. The day after Christmas, our mother called and said she didn't want to be a mother anymore. And I said if I took Adrienne that Christmas, that I would not give her back. And I got immediate physical custody. Eventually, I sued for legal custody and won. But overnight, I became her primary caregiver. And it was a bit of a shock for both of us. And as a caregiver, you are a leader. You have to trust your gut. And Adrienne and I had this very pivotal moment in our relationship, which I think happens in all relationships, but especially parent-child relationships. And she'd been living with me for about 4 or 5 months, and we went out for her 9th birthday. And she got mad when the staff at the restaurant sang happy birthday to her. And she threw a temper tantrum. And I'm talking 2-year-old temper tantrum, kicking, screaming, on the floor, hitting, you name it. I physically dragged her out of the restaurant. Yeah, that's right. We don't do that in a restaurant. And physically dragged her out of the restaurant, took her home and told her she needed to stop. And she said, "I don't want to live with you anymore. I want to move back to Alabama." Okay. And this is what I mean by trusting your gut. In that moment, I just was like, what can I tell this little girl? There's no one else but me. There's no one to go home to. But I decided to call her bluff. So right in front of her, I just picked up the phone. I called Northwest Airlines, and I made a reservation for the next day to send her home. Now, some of you look maybe my age, maybe a little older. Who remembers the good old days when you could call an airline, make a reservation, and they would hold it for 24 hours? And for my younger people, without payment. It was awesome, right? So I didn't have the money to pay for the ticket, but Adrienne didn't know that. So I said, pack your bags. It's time to go home. Pack them. And then I went to the living room and I did what I think is hard for any parent. I just waited. I just really hoped it was going to pay off. Meanwhile, I can hear her throwing things against the wall and yelling. And I just waited, and it took an hour. And she came out, her head was down, and she said, I don't want to go, sissy. I want to stay. And I said, okay, well, then we need to establish some rules right now. And the first one is, you will never act that way in public ever again. And she never did. And the second rule was, and I explained this to her, I said, I know this is hard, but I have to be your parent first, then your sister, and later when you grow up, I really hope to be your friend. And she said, okay, parent, sister, friend. Got it. And that became the blueprint for our relationship. And it's that moment where I set boundaries that were so firm that she knew exactly where I stood at all times. Now, I bet you didn't know this, but Adrienne and I took the first selfie in 1995 with my very heavy 35 millimeter camera. Now, let's go back to where we started on May 16th, 2001. She gets that CAT scan in the ER, and the ER doctor is the one who came out and said she has tumors in her liver and lungs. And we're not equipped to handle this situation. You never want to hear that from a doctor, okay? And they immediately sent us by ambulance to Children's Hospital, Los Angeles, because the hospital we were at, the local one, did not treat pediatric patients. And a biopsy 2 days later revealed she had stage 4 hepatocellular carcinoma, or as you've learned, HCC. So it already metastasized to her lungs. And this was a time in 2001, there were no options for HCC. What you heard Dr. Shea talk about earlier, there was no systemic therapy, no immunotherapy, no targeted therapy. It simply did not exist. Her pediatric oncologist came up with this very toxic chemo regimen. One of the drugs is what many breast cancer patients now call the red devil. And the other drug, which I call the yellow devil, has a very serious side effect of hearing loss. And when Adrienne heard about this, it was like going back in time to that moment in the restaurant. And she just yelled at the doctor, I'd rather be dead than deaf. And that's because she was a budding musician and music was her life. So in that moment, she laid down her own boundary. In that moment at 15, she advocated for herself. And the pediatric oncologist, we weren't a big fan of his, but he did do one thing right, although he didn't agree with it, but he did. He had her sign off on her chemotherapy slip. This is her actual chemotherapy permission slip. That's her signature, and that's mine. And Adrienne knew that we didn't need her permission, but it gave her back her power. And I think it was Dr. Singal earlier who said, you actually can control a lot more than you think, and that's something I want you to remember. So keep in mind, I said Adrienne advocated for herself. Advocacy requires courage. You don't need credentials. You don't need letters after your name to stand up for yourself or your loved one. And by the way, that's not the pediatric oncologist we did not like. This was the pediatric resident. And she still to this day is a pediatric oncologist. She is a donor to Blue Faery, and we have kept in touch for over 20 years. She was amazing, amazing. So advocacy, ask questions. Hey, if you don't know something, ask. And this applies to life too, by the way. When I first heard Adrienne's diagnosis, I couldn't even pronounce it. I couldn't remember it. And the only part I remembered was cellular, because a friend of mine had just gotten a cell phone. Like, I was like, oh, I was like, I don't think those are connected, but okay. Demand answers. This is really, really important. You're going to ask questions, demand answers. And sometimes, if you're really fortunate, you're going to get a doctor. If they don't know the answer, they will actually say that to you. And that's an answer within itself, right? So demand answers. Get a second opinion. Years ago, I was getting the original hardwood floors in my house resurfaced. And I got 3 bids. And I started thinking about this the other day, and why do we treat our homes better than we treat our bodies? Why do we do that? I got 3 bids for freaking hardwood floors. So get a second opinion. And I know that's not easy to do. I should have started by saying, at the time of Adrienne's diagnosis, I did not have health insurance for myself. I had the equivalent of Medicaid for her due to a loophole in the California law. It's called Medi-Cal. But that still meant that they didn't cover everything. And that did not stop me from getting a second opinion. It just took a lot more work. Respect the patient. And this can be very, very hard as a caregiver when you want something different than the patient wants. That yellow devil did cause some minor hearing loss after 2 rounds of chemotherapy. And even though I didn't agree with the decision, we did stop that drug. Stay organized. So you've met a lot of my team here today, and I joke with them that the day I meet someone more organized than me is the day I find my personal assistant for life. I am very naturally organized, and when you have a loved one who's fighting cancer, there is a lot to keep track of. I mean, there are doctor's appointments and tests and treatments and scans. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. I turned our kitchen into our personal cancer command center. And I think Dr. Rich touched on this earlier. I created what I called Adrienne's survival kit. Anyone can do this, by the way. It was a 3-inch, 3-ring binder, and everything to do with her cancer went in that binder. Everything, every test result, current medications, insurance, Social Security, you name it, it went in the binder. And I still recommend that to this day because EHR systems do not talk to each other. I've been in a doctor's appointment where I saw the results of a scan and my doctor didn't because the systems weren't talking to each other. And also the beauty of having everything printed in a binder is that you, the caregiver, let's say you can't take your loved one to the doctor's appointment, the binder goes with the patient, right? And everything, every question the doctor may have is in the binder. So I do really recommend that. Now, when I ask questions and I don't get the answers I want, I do a lot of research. I read. So within days of getting this diagnosis, I got a 2-inch medical dictionary, which I still have, and a copy of Grey's Anatomy. The book, not the TV show. There was a book long before the TV show. It's very thick too. And I was just poring over these books. And I kind of gasped when I read the survival statistics. And Adrienne asked what I was reading, and I told her. And she said, read it out loud to me. And I really didn't want to, but I did. And her response was, well, I'll just be one of the less than 5% who survive. Because that was the survival rate for advanced HCC in 2001. Unfortunately, it hasn't gotten much better. It's getting a little better, but not much better. And she remained so positive, so forward-thinking, and also she just embodied resilience. If you take nothing away from my talk today, I want you to remember this. Resilience doesn't mean that you never fall down. Resilience doesn't mean that you never fail. No. Resilience means you get right back up every time you fall down or fail. Just get back up. That is so important. And these are sort of 5 tips to kind of find your own inner resilience, because let me tell you, whether you're the patient or the caregiver, you're both fighting cancer in your own way, and it's hard. It's hard. So the first thing you can do, change the story. Adrienne did not lose her hair because she had cancer. The night before chemotherapy, she shaved her head into 4 mohawks and called it her quad hawk. And we were all marveling like, wow, she had a perfectly round head. I mean, this is a good look for her. So she changed the story. Seek support, whatever that looks like for you. So Adrienne had been seeing her psycho doctor, those are her words, not mine, for a few years for depression. And this is Denise, and I'm still in touch with her today, an amazing woman. And the only thing that changed was Denise came to our house instead of us going to her office once a week. So Denise was there all the way to the end with us. Set boundaries. Just as I had set those boundaries all those years before with Adrienne about how to behave in our relationship, she set boundaries too. It was like her 3rd day in the hospital, and she thought I was being too negative. She kicked me out. My own kid kicked me out of the hospital. She told me to go home and to straighten out my attitude. And I woke up the next morning and I realized, oh my gosh, like if I don't turn this around in my head, my child is not going to let me be there for her. And that was one of only 2 times that I didn't stay in the hospital with her because she kicked me out. Also, make plans. We were always making plans, whether it was like going to the ballet or a specific restaurant or medieval times. Adrienne always had plans. And this is another reason to stay organized. I knew when it was safe for her to go out in public, when her white blood cell count was up, when her immune system was good. And because I kept track so carefully of her labs. And the entire time she was fighting cancer, she had a cold 1 time. That was it. That's how on top of it we were. And her attitude really was, when she would check into the hospital, because it was all for a good period of time inpatient, was, when can I get out of here? When can I get out of here? I got people to see, places to go, things to do. When can I leave? And studies show that people who have milestones do better in treatment, whether it's, let's say, the birth of a grandchild, or your daughter's wedding, or a wedding anniversary, or I know many, many patients who wanted to hit a certain milestone birthday, and they did. So please make plans. And also, you have to find the humor. It's not always easy, but you got to look for it. The last week of Adrienne's life, the whites of her eyes turned yellow. She was experiencing jaundice for the very first time, and her liver was finally, truly failing her. And when her doctor pointed this out to her, she replied completely deadpan, "I didn't notice," because she didn't look in the mirror very often. I need a clicker. Gonna get one next time. And I'm gonna keep this PG, but this is what Adrienne said in her journal. "Every effing moment after this cancer is dead, I'm going to be alive." And I actually think this statement's a little ironic because she never stopped living. Not once. I talked about making plans. Well, Adrienne met her favorite musician, this is him. Who recognizes that guy? You're all of a certain age, I can tell. Dave Navarro of Jane's Addiction. She met him not once, but twice. And people think I motivated or did all that. That was all her. And this is us on the set of The Tonight Show, where she met him the first time. So I really want to talk about what I call the 147-day mindset. Adrienne did not use the words bucket list. She did not say them. I did not acknowledge what she was doing, but it was really clear to me that she was trying to cram in as many things as possible as quickly as she could, because she knew she didn't have a lot of time left. And she lived more in 147 days than most people do in a lifetime. And I can tell you right now, I've lost, counting Adrienne, 7 family members to 5 different types of cancer. No one handled it better than her. Not even close. She had so much courage, dignity, grace, and most of all, humor. So this mindset, experience joy. What makes you happy? Who do you like to spend time with? That's really, really important. So I want you to ask yourself those questions. Share your story. Long before we wrote things down, we told each other our stories. And we realized very early on that there was a lot of misunderstanding around liver cancer. Shocker. And we discovered this when some of Adrienne's friends' parents, who were all about 10 years older than me, so in their late 30s, actually said to our faces, "Oh my God, I didn't know she was a drinker. She's an honor student." I was trying to do my Southern California accent, but the Southern came through. So anyway, but Adrienne didn't get offended. She saw that as an opportunity to share her story and to clarify misunderstandings about HCC. Also, help others. And I know you're doing this because you're here today. And whenever Adrienne was roommates, if you will, in the hospital with a small child, her goal was to make that child laugh. And the most memorable one was a 10-year-old girl who was fighting cancer for the 3rd time. And she and her parents didn't speak a lot of English. And the translator was late. And they looked absolutely terrified. And Adrienne put on all these wigs and started making really funny faces until the girl and her parents were laughing. It was super important to her. Find your purpose. I am convinced that Adrienne had 2 purposes in her very short life. The first one is she rescued me. There's a whole nother talk and another story, but when she came into my life that Christmas vacation, I was a hot mess and I was not going in a good direction. And becoming her parent really changed me for good in the best possible way. And the other purpose I believe Adrienne had was to give you and me and others a blueprint for how to live. And, it's funny, I don't think most of the doctors are here now, but I think the reason sometimes doctors are intimidating, it's not because they went to school forever or all the letters after their name. I think it's really because they know their purpose. And that can be a little intimidating. And also know your purpose can change throughout life. And the next one, I'm going to say, it's really hard. Forgive everyone. At one point, Adrienne knew she was dying. Mind you, she didn't tell me. She protected me, but she knew. And she consciously forgave everyone. She forgave our mother for abandoning her, for shooting up drugs, for losing her job. She forgave her father for dying before she ever had a chance to meet him. She forgave our brother, who for a period of time in her life physically abused her. She forgave everyone who had walked away from her, and there was a long list of people. And somehow, this incredible 15-year-old girl, young woman, I should say, found a way to forgive all of those people. And that was critical for her in order to die. Now, I talked about living, and boy, did she live. And since I don't have a pointer, I'm just going to walk around because the screen's so big. So I talked earlier about experiencing joy. We found out early on that the Children's Hospital had a program called Pets Assisting with Smiles, or PAWS. And the dogs would visit the oncology ward every Monday. So Adrienne said, okay, that's it. Chemo on Mondays. That's it. So here are some pictures of her in the PAWS program. I have so many pictures because we were there on Mondays. And chemo's not fun, but hanging out with dogs is. Also, Adrienne's survival kit, I mentioned earlier. I still have it. And here she is at the top, cutting off her hair before shaving it into the quad hawk. Here she is at home with her cat, Little Bit. And Adrienne loved animals so much that she decided to become vegan. That lasted for 24 hours. She decided, cows, it's not quite the same. And then here she is on her Make-A-Wish day in these two photos. We went to a restaurant. She saw an Iron Chef. She loved to cook, a skill she did not get from me. Don't know where it came from. And then she got to meet Dave Navarro for the second time. And she got a private concert from him. And I will say that after Adrienne died, Dave Navarro emailed me and Jay Leno called me at home. Really amazing people. And then the last photo at the top, I want to really point out. This is one of the last photos of Adrienne taken alive. We were going to a barbecue over Labor Day weekend. So at this point, she had been fighting this for about 4 months. And she was tired. She was exhausted. We had just switched her care to UCLA. And she didn't want to go, but she showed up anyway. And she did because her best friend was going to be at that barbecue. And I know now that Adrienne realized it was going to be the last time she would see her. And indeed, that was the last time she allowed any of her friends to see her because she did not want them remembering her being weak and fragile. So now I'm going to put this to you, and I really want you to take this home and think about it. If you only had 147 days, what would you do? That's less than 5 months. What kind of joy are you experiencing? Are you having fun in your life? Are you sharing your story with others? Stories move people, not numbers. Are you helping others? And I really believe you are because you're here today. And are you able to forgive people? Someone said yes. Oh, you are a better woman than I am. Oh my God. I find this to be very hard. And I heard this years ago. I hated it. And I was like, oh gosh, darn, it's true. Forgiveness is about you. It's not about the other person. Forgiving someone in silence and never speaking to them again is a form of self-care. That was an Instagram meme I saw earlier this week. But I was like, that's pretty good. I like that. And I want you to know that I embrace this mindset now whenever I catch myself. And because of this mindset, my husband and I sat down recently and realized where we live now in Birmingham, Alabama, is not where we want to be. And so we are planning our move in the next 18 months. And we are making those plans and looking ahead because we're like, why are we here? We don't need to stay here. You do have today. So again, what are you going to do with all the knowledge you learned this morning? How are you going to share that with other people? I was talking to someone earlier who was talking about, well, if one of you goes home and shares this with 2 people, and then they share with 2 people, and they share with more people, right? We could really change the world. And this is my book. It's available on Kindle Unlimited on Amazon, and you can scan that QR code for more information. But if you stick around till 3, one of you is going to win a copy. And again, thank you so, so much for showing up for yourself and for others today.